What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the first official non-live episode of the Longball podcast. Blake with Hayden here, talking with you guys. Eastern preview shows. It's been about a week or two. World Baseball Classic's been really fun. Hayden and I have been following that. Spring training races are starting to heat up. Camps are getting cut. It's been all types of fun stuff. Baseball is coming down to the wire. We got March Madness to get us to opening day if necessary. But yeah, just a quick PSA since we are not live. Reason being is our founder, AK Eagles, if you guys know his channel, is basically the guy who runs our whole hardcore sports StreamYard. And because of that, we are in like a 2 day layover where he has to upgrade the whole system. And because of that, we don't have access to all our graphics, all our background knowledge, and the stuff that you usually see behind us. So if it does look a little elementary today, that is why we're just in that little 4 to 8 hour period where we don't have access to all this stuff. But yeah, man, we got some good stuff to talk about. Hayden, what's on the headlines for today?
Yeah, all is going well on my end. No major complaints. Today we are going to be talking about the NL East and the AL East series season preview. So we're going to be previewing and I guess predicting how the divisions are going to look for the National League East and the American League East. Essentially, Blake and I are really just going to go over kind of you know what team is going to finish where in the division and kind of a little bit of an analysis with each team in those divisions, some players, pretty much the good, the bad, and the ugly for those teams. So yeah, it's got a good stream video ahead of us, and we're going to be doing these in three different. Obviously, today is going to be the National and American League East. Then we'll do the NL Central and AL Central in one, and then the third is going to be the American and National League West. So split it up a little bit. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. How you been, by the way? I know you just got back from spring break and you had some time at the Mets facilities and a couple other spring games. How was that for you?
Yeah, no, I was at a couple spring training games. Had a fun time. Always good to be at the ballpark in Florida. Just relax, soak in the view, be around the fans, get some food, drinks, all that great stuff. Games don't really count, so it's not like I'm super focused on the games. But yeah, it's always enjoyable to go to some spring training games. I strongly recommend it if you're in the area or have a little bit of money to spend, but you don't want to go away too crazy. It's a good thing to do during the day or at night.
Yeah, all I know is that the World Baseball Classic has really effed up my sleep schedule a couple times the last couple weeks. Seeing, not wanting to miss games at midnight, the day games over in Tokyo and Taiwan, and then those middle of the night games where Shohei's been on the mound or a 3-0 Australia team was playing. You didn't want to miss them. Even I know the Braves have some guys on the Netherlands teams. I didn't want to miss any of their games. So every time I fix my sleep schedule the last couple months, sports has been the one to mess it up, whether it's been a Hawks West Coast road trip, whether it's been World Baseball Classic at night. But yeah, it's living the life, that's for sure. So being that we're National League fans, I think it's probably fair to start in the American League East, talk about our picks from 5 to 1, reverse chronological, just for a little bit of suspense, so to be less fun just to drop the division winner and have you guys skip the rest. We got to make it listen to our annoying voices for just a little bit. So Hayden, I'll start with you. Who is your seller team in the debatably best team in best division in baseball? I think, in my opinion, the American League East.
So we're starting off with the American League East, the worst team. Yeah, I mean, I think it has to go to Boston, and that's the Boston Red Sox. Mind-boggling that 2 years ago at this time they were in contention for the best team in baseball. Yeah, yet alone the best team in their division, but the best team in baseball. And boy, so much has really changed. Right now this offseason, yeah, they brought back in Rafael Devers, and Devers is going to have to be the guy to, really carry that Boston Red Sox team. They have a couple talented guys in that roster: Rafael Devers, Bobby Dahlbeck, bringing in Justin Turner, Alberto Mondesi, Adam Duvall, Rob Refsnyder, Enrique Hernandez, Alex Verdugo, a couple of offensive contributors there who could definitely make some noise. Right now this is a team that's going to rely heavily on their young guys, their young prospects. And, last year they didn't really turn out super well. So we'll see. Maybe, could they have a better, season starting in April rather than getting the call up? We'll see how that's going to go into play for the Boston Red Sox. rotation wise, it's nothing too crazy. Bullpen's pretty mid. Rotation wise, you have a lot of decent, somewhat adequate starters. Whether that's Tanner Houck or James Paxton, Nick Pivetta, Garrett Whitlock. Obviously, Chris Sale is kind of on that list. He is injured, so you kind of have to see how it goes with him. So, right now you have a lot of questions with that Red Sox lineup. And honestly, right now with Boston, just with how that AL East is, and we're going to talk about it so much more. Honestly, I have the Red Sox finishing in 5th place, and I could see them going like a 74 and 88. I don't think they'll be like crazy bad, but I think they'll be like 10 games under 500, just about. I just think they are not going to be able to contend with the whole of the AL East. So yeah, I have them finishing in 5th place.
Ironically, I think we're probably going to agree a little bit here and there, and that's just unfortunately, as knowledgeable baseball fans, you're not going to be completely off on every single take. I also have the Boston Red Sox finishing in last place in the American League East. A lot of it, as I said, goes back to how competitive that division is. And there's a world, if they were in the AL Central, they could be right there with Cleveland for one or two. With Minnesota, with the White Sox, you could argue that the Boston team over 162 could be better than those two teams. But you play who's in your division. I know you play them less, but the standings are ultimately going to be what the ultimate deciding factor is. And yeah, we've talked about them so many times. They don't have a direct direction on where they're going as a franchise. They just won the World Series 4 years ago. They have the most World Series championships in this 21st century. But yeah, dude, like they don't have a identity at this point where a lot of the guys from that 2018 team are gone. They're giving money out to certain guys instead of retaining ones that have been there for a long time and worked really well for them. They have a lot of questionable additions like the Mondesi, the Trevor Story injury has kind of put a halter on some things. I don't think Kenley Jansen is going to have a great year by any means with the new pitch clock, which we're starting to see come to fruition here with college ball being a month in and spring training baseball being like 2 or 3 weeks in. I don't know how the guy's going to be able to adjust to that at his age. So there's going to be a lot of games they're not going to be able to close out. The starting rotation is kind of thin as it is. I don't really know how much longer they're going to be able to grab Rule 5 guys, AAA guys, and just kind of roll them out and expect a 4 ERA. And I know it's not really the day and age to use that stat anymore, but it's I feel bad for Boston, but I also don't, being that I think that we've had this discussion before. It's best for them just to go ahead and bite the bullet and rebuild. It'll only be a couple years. With how the division is facing up, it makes the most sense for them. They're a team that if they are in the right mode of rebuilding, they're going to be able to scout really well. They're going to be able to draft really well, and it ultimately won't be as long as people think. They're going to be able to keep with some of their cornerstones in the process, like the Devers and company. Xander really got away to San Diego for I don't really think any good reason. They could have paid him instead of shelling in all the other salary on the veterans that they decided to add. But yeah, this team could be a Chicago Cubs team of 2021, where if it doesn't work, crap hits the fan, and they might sell high on a lot of pieces. But if it's still in that category and they don't, man, you got to start thinking that Shane Bloom is going to be wanted dead or alive by the Boston people. He's just not the same guy he was in Tampa at all. I mean, who knows? This division's so good they could shock us and be second place like they were in 2021 because it was similar that year. They didn't have a lot of prospects. The division looked so good. They're going to finish just over 500 in fourth place. They were 2 games away from the World Series. Led 2-1 in a series against Houston and lost home field at Fenway, and that was the ultimate decider. But yeah, and I think it'll be a pretty long summer for Red Sox fans, but don't worry, the Celtics got you to June, and your Patriots are making moves. Psych, but we'll see. The Bruins and Celtics are definitely still the place to be in town. All right, who's your fourth place team, Hayden?
Yeah, coming in 4th, and like I said, this is going to be a very close division. So, like I said, some of these win-loss records are going to be, a 2-3 game difference. And coming in at 4th place, I have the Tampa Bay Rays. I think the Rays are probably going to go something around the lines of 83 and 79. So, just a couple games over 500. And, I get it. The Rays are a team that always use these Moneyball analytic mentality, rely heavily on their farm system. But, the Rays are coming off of one of their worst off seasons in the league, losing a ton of talented players while gaining not much in return. And I feel a lot of the projections have the Rays doing somewhat mid just because of the mentality of Moneyball and having the guys in the right situation. But you look at that roster, and I'm looking at it now. There's only so many guys I have faith in. I like Wander Franco. I think having him healthy for the full year is definitely going to mean a lot. He has that mega contract, so I think he could do some great stuff. Randy Arozarena, Tampa Bay favorite. He's obviously going to be doing some great stuff. You have a couple other guys, Isaiah Paredes, Taylor Walls, Manuel Margot, Harold Ramirez. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, you have a lot of good guys in that mix. Brandon Lau, he could definitely be hitting, 20, 25 home runs for them. Pitching-wise, they got a decent rotation. I mean, the fact is, Zach Eflin is going to be their most expensive pitcher, and yet alone most expensive contracts in their history. That's definitely quite interesting, if I may say. But, you got some decent arms in that. Josh Fleming, Drew Rasmussen, Luis Patino, Jeffrey Springs, as stated, Zach Eflin, Pete Fairbanks, Shane Boz. So you have a lot of young talent there, a lot of guys that are, from 21 to 27. So you got a lot of young pre-arbitration guys in this mix. I think the biggest thing is going to be Tyler Glasnow. I believe he is still out for a couple of months. I don't believe he's going to be starting the season on time. So, even when you get him back, you're going to have to rest him. So, they're going to be making a lot of calls from AAA. So, and they're just going to somehow come up and just get on base and throw the strikes and do what they need to do. But like I said, with that division, I'm going to have more faith in a lot of proven all-star guys than some of these AAA Moneyball mentality guys. And don't get me wrong, it's great. It could win you ball games, but I just think that AL East is just so stacked. And, the Rays were in another division. Let's say they were in, I don't know, the NL Central. I think I could put them as like a second or third place team. But, like I said, you can't choose your family. I think the Rays are a great young team. I don't think they're going into a rebuild or anything like that. But I just think, right now, I just think they're a fourth place team. So, like I said, I could see them going something around the lines of like, 83 and 79, I think, coming in at fourth place, Tampa Bay Rays.
I like how you put it there. You can't choose your family. This is going to be our first crossroad. We might end up crossing once back over here in our next pick, ironically, being but what we talked about off camera before the show. I hate to do this, but I got the Baltimore Orioles in fourth place. A team that was projected to win 60 games last year, and for the first month, looked all to par. Year 5, year 6 of their rebuild still was no progress, but they finally called up the man, Adley Rushman. Gunnar Henderson also saw a cup of coffee in the majors last year. Those two guys, along with all the others that came up, showed their future, and they had a spot in the wild card locked in on a day in September. So it was a very exciting finish to the season in Camden Yards. People started showing back up. Their new dimensions out in left field were playing really well into their youthful pitchers' hands. And yeah, dude, they did it in a year where they had to trade away their heart and soul, Trey Mancini, to win a World Series, but also without their ace for the last 4 years, John Means. Got a nice arbitration deal, and I think he'll probably be back at some point. I wouldn't be surprised if he was back by opening day, if not beginning of May. And I was listening to something about the Orioles a couple weeks ago, and it says that they have one of the most favorable schedules in the month of April, so maybe they can get on the hot streak, get the young guys that experience, get them rolling, and all of a sudden they're looking at a more successful year. But the thing to me, it comes back to the talent in the division. They didn't do enough this offseason. And for a team that's projecting to make the playoffs, you can't be sitting here with like a $43 million payroll. You just can't. I know that they're probably going to end up having to jump that payroll in the next coming years. Like, I assume they're going to want to pay guys like the Mountcastles, like the Mullins, like the Santanders, like John Means, like Batista. Maybe they even want to have a homecoming of Trey Mancini after his Chicago Cubs era. I don't know. That's definitely going to have to be a thing. They're going to have to jump up to keep that part of the core together. And in a couple of years, they're going to want to pay the guys that work out like Gunnar, like Adley, and so many others. A team that could probably use a couple shifting around, like the guys like Roman Arias might not have a fit there in the system much longer with all the middle infield prospects. soon to be in the major leagues, with other teams that could definitely use a stopgap shortstop. So be in the looks for Baltimore to maybe make a couple shifts in their roster if their season is a little rocky. But yeah, I think they're over under projection. It has them at like 84 wins, and I think last year they ended with like 83. Definitely one of the better teams they've had in a long time. I think it'll at least be entertaining for the Baltimore people to watch if Lamar Jackson doesn't get his contract this summer. They get to watch the birds from across the way on that are orange instead of purple, right? So yeah, I got them fourth place, but I wouldn't be surprised if they still finish over 500 with the balanced schedule and how competitive the division is. So yeah, go birds. Um, third place, Hayden, you're back up on the clock.
Yeah, coming in at third place, I'm gonna have the Baltimore Orioles, and I think they'll go 86 and 76. Yeah, like you said, I mean, the Orioles have gotten a lot of hype recently over their massive rebuild. I still don't think the team has all the pieces together, but I think this team is going to rely heavily on two young guys, and you name them, Adley Rushman and Gunnar Henderson. Both of those guys made they got their first reps in the bigs last year. Rushman got called up, around May. Henderson got called up like the last month or two of the season. And, they had pretty good seasons. I mean, Rushman got hot. And, now people are talking, is Adley Rushman, a top 3, top 5 catcher in the league right now. And I think you can make the case for that. I think offensively and defensively, he can qualify for that. And, right now you look at this Orioles team, they have a lot of guys who could really be some great offensive contributors. Like I said, I'm expecting big seasons from Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rushman. I think these guys are going to be all-stars. I think they are going to hit, anywhere above 8, an 850 OPS. I mean, these are two talented guys. You've been hearing them, top prospects and all that stuff. And I think this is going to be the year where they really break out. Like I said, so many offensive contributors, and there's a lot of guys who could just break out for this team. You have so many pre-arbitration guys who could just break out. And like you said, these could be big years for these guys that want to get locked up on deals. I think Rushman, Gunnar Henderson, two young guys. And then, you're dealing with, your Ryan Mountcastles, your Austin Hayes, Cedric Mullins, Anthony Santander's of the world. Keep in mind, Cedric Mullins, that was 2 years ago, had like, what he didn't, I think he went like 20 for 20 or 30 for 30. So, we'll see if he could do something like that again. The Orioles offensively are a pretty decent team. Like I said, I mean, the dimensions, obviously, moving out the wall is going to result in a lot of more extra base hits and triples and some sort. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. Could benefit them when they're for their pitchers. But, their rotation isn't horrible either. Bringing Kyle Gibson this offseason, I think he'll be most likely the opening day starter for them. The pitching staff's okay. I don't think it's like, a top 10 or arguably even maybe a top 15. You can make an argument, but I think it's somewhere around that. Last year they relied heavily on their veterans coming in big in that rotation. And, you have a couple young guys. So you got Cole Irvin from the Athletics. You have Dean Kramer. Or Kramer. I think he'll have a pretty decent season for them. He could be this, sub 3 ERA type guy, to use a basic stat there. So, if you could see some good stuff from their rotation, I don't have a whole lot of confidence in their bullpen. I know their bullpen was pretty solid last year. I'm not crazy about it. I think you have a couple guys in that mix who could be, in and out of the minor leagues. There are plenty of minor league options, so you could kind of, move them back and forth. But like I said, I think it's going to be an interesting year in Baltimore. I wouldn't be surprised if they start off the season kind of slow. And then maybe, come in June, July, be a second half team, get this big, goal, like, win their 15, the last 20 games, something like that. I could see, like I said, I don't think the Orioles are going to be contending for the division. I still think they have some more pieces to build, maybe coming the deadline. If, they're playing, 500 ball or 5-10 games above 500 ball, maybe they make a big splash at the deadline and, get some solid arm or whatever weakness that they need to address. Because, there's going to be a weakness for them, of course. But yeah, I think the Orioles are going to have an interesting season. I think they'll be probably contending for that wild card spot, considering, you have the extra wild card. You have the extra playoff spot. So I think teams like the Orioles are going to benefit off that. So yeah, I have the Orioles finishing in third place, 86 and 76. And yeah, I think they're going to have a really interesting season and surprise a lot of baseball fans.
See, this is where our crossroads going to continue. You want Tampa fourth, Baltimore third. I had Baltimore fourth, and my third place team in the American League East, the Moneyball Tampa Bay Rays. I'll try to say a little bit differently than what you had. I think this might be the best team they've had since their 2020 pennant win. I know it's only been 2 complete seasons since then, but the Rays slumbered in last year with 87 wins with a team that was rattled with injuries. Like, just a team that didn't deserve to make the playoffs, found a way. They a lot of people were shocked at the Austin Meadows trade right before opening day, and Isaac Paredes just turned out to be an absolute demon for them last year. Wander Franco had a very much sophomore slump after getting the big payday from a team that doesn't like to pay guys all sorts of money, but a guy who didn't really see much time on the field last year. So you got to think that he's due to bounce back a little bit. You still got Randy Arozarena, and he looks great in the World Baseball Classic as of recently. So you got a lot of hopes for him and what he's planning to do this year. I mean, Yandy Diaz, they like the launch angle fix that he's been able to make, and I think that he might be in quality for an extension here sometime soon. They were able to get rid of some of the guys that weren't really cutting it for them, and they look more like a serviceable baseball team than more of a funky Kevin Cash's, clown car. They got rid of Brett Phillips, who was great in moments, was just ultimately not what they needed to push the needle. Kevin Kiermaier was one of the hearts and souls of that franchise for a long time, finally was able to find a new home within division in the northern part of North America. So they'll see him quite a few times this season. Mike Zunino, who's now in his 30s, has had two down years back to back. They are rolling with Christian Bethancourt, former Braves prospect, who I think is a perfect guy for the Tampa Bay Rays, a guy who can start, a guy who can catch, a guy who can play middle infield, a guy who can play eighth inning bullpen role. That's the reason they traded for him. He fits every single thing they love to do down there. So yeah, I mean, they got a couple prospects, a couple guys that are in the bullpen that haven't even heard of. And usually if that's the Rays, that's a scary thing, and that's a bad thing. And that's the thing that's going to work out really well for them. They handed out their biggest contract in franchise history, 3 years, $41 million to Led Zeppelin, Zach Eflin himself, a guy who finally come into a good role last year, solidifying the back end of that Phillies rotation. If they're signing him for 3 years, they see something in that guy. And that's scary. Jeffrey Springs and Drew Rasmussen looked really good last year. They're kind of taking over for, Ryan Yarbrough now being gone. Corey Kluber is now officially continuing his AL East tour elsewhere. I think he's with Boston this year. So third team in 3 years, he's going to retire with an Oriole at this rate. Yeah, dude. And I think Tyler Glasnow was definitely the news they didn't want to hear, hearing that he was supposed to be back for opening day and having just another Cy Young quality candidate in the rotation who I haven't even mentioned, Shane McClanahan, yet. Like, you get Tyler Glasnow in there, like, their rotation might be 5 and dive, but you got McClanahan, Glasnow, Springs, Eflin, Rasmussen. That's a good rotation. The bullpen, they're going to always add. It's always going to be better than what it looks on paper. I just mentioned a couple of the offensive pieces. G-Man Choi, another man who's out, and I think they have a couple infield prospects that they're hoping on. Vidal Brujan's expected to have a better year, a bounce back season. Manuel Margot, they keep their guys for a reason. I think this is going to be a really feisty team. I think they're going to be a lot better than they were last year. I don't know if they crack 90 wins. I might put them under in that, but I do think they make the playoffs, similar to what they did last year. I think they do score runs in their playoff games this year, and I have them as a very good third place team in this stacked AL East division. All right, partner, it's back on you. I know this is going to be a tough decision, but I'm willing to hear it out. Let's see if we align.
Yeah, so coming in at second place, and I really do think it's going to be really, really tight. And I'm going to go the Toronto Blue Jays. I think they'll finish second in the AL East, and I think they'll probably go 96 and 65 or 64. 96 and 64, if my math corrects. 96 and 64, I think they'll go. Blue Jays are a very talented ball club. They haven't quite exactly won a playoff game in quite some time. And I think last year's results are really going to spark a lot. Rotation-wise, let me just pull up their rotation quickly. My apologies. Rotation-wise, you definitely got a pretty adequate rotation, in my opinion. Having guys like Chris Bassett, Jose Barrios, Kevin Gausman, Alec Manoa. Um, you know, pretty solid guys right there. We'll see what the young Nate Pearson could do if, what role he'll be. Will they rely on a 6-man rotation? Probably not, but it's always good to have plenty of depth. Hyunjin Ryu, we'll see if he can come back and do something great. Like I said, he was a Dodger and then he got hurt and just never really was able to get back to his old self. So we'll see, can he get somewhat back to his old self? Alec Manoa had a phenomenal season last year, broke out big time, was an all-star, dominated, went out there, he was consistent. You never really heard, injury. He went out there, he played 31 games last year. The definition of consistency. And you want a guy who gets the ball every 5 days, you got Alec Manoa. Like I said, 6 WAR guy. And I hate to use WAR, B WAR, 6. For a pitcher, that's pretty darn good. Like, I know he went out there, played 31 games, but still, that's pretty darn good. Bullpen is really great. You got a lot of new bullpen arms, a couple from the Marlins, Zach Pop, Anthony Bass. You got Chad Green, but you have so much depth. And I know I'm as a Mets fan, but you have what, like 7, 8 guys that qualify for that rotation spot. I mean, that's just crazy to think about. In terms of the offense, they were a pretty stacked lineup. Behind the plate, you'll have Danny Jansen and Alejandro Kirk. Kirk had a phenomenal year last year offensively as a catcher. Was pretty mid defensively, but just broke out offensively. But, you brought in guys like Brandon Belt. You brought in Kevin Kiermaier. You brought in Dalton Varsho. Varsho's a guy who could hit you 25, 30 home runs. And then you add that on top of George Springer, Vlad Jr., Kevin Biggio, Bo Bichette, Matt Chapman, Santiago Espinal. And then, then you have Whit Merrifield. That's a stacked lineup. Maybe the 8 9 holes may be a little, weak of, Kevin Kiermaier. I'm not really expecting him to do a whole lot offensively. Great speed, great center fielder. I'm sure he'll make plenty of great catches. But, right now I think this Blue Jays team is going to have a lot. I think Toronto has one of the deepest lineups in the league. They could pretty much lose anyone in this lineup to injury, and it wouldn't really have much of an effect. You wouldn't see it. You have a strong group of starting pitchers, and I think this could easily be at least a wild card spot at most, winning that division. I just think they have so much talent. Talk about a 5-tool player. I think this is a 5-tool team. You have the speed, you have the athleticism, you have the power. So Toronto, I'm expecting big things from them. So yeah, I have them coming in second place, winning. What did I say? I said like 996 and 66 or something like that. I think they'll probably go something like that.
I definitely have a lot to say about them myself. I don't know if it'll be here or in 2 minutes because my second place team in the American League East might be our first controversial hot take. I'm willing to stick with it. We're a small pod. Who's going to hurt us at this point in time? Hayden, you ready? My second place team in the American League East is the New York Yankees. What's up? What's up?
I don't know. I just wanted to hype you up.
My second place team. I'm trying to be the type of person who starts hating the Yankees less and less. I think it's just, as a kid, their fans have not been the nicest to me at Braves Yankee games, and it stuck with me for most of my life. That's for sure. They're just a bunch of douches. I hate to put it that way, but it's the fan base as a whole. Now we're gonna have Yankee fans coming at us. Whatever. 2009, buddy. Yeah, dude, I'm glad that they had a great offseason. The rotation was looking like one of the best in baseball. It still might be, even without Frankie Montas, who granted wasn't good in his time in New York in the starts he had last year. I mean, their top 2 in their rotation is getting paid over $400 million. Like, they're going to shove with Garrett Cole, Carlos Rodon. I don't think Nestor Cortez is going to have that knockoff that people are thinking about, saying that he's going to have a 6 ERA with all the pitch clock stuff. No, he's able to tweak that. I don't think that's going to be a major drastic change like a lot of people are talking about. They kind of brought back a couple of pieces that I feel didn't really move the needle for them last year. Like they re-upped with Isaiah Kiner Falefa. They kept Josh Donaldson. They kept Aaron Hicks. Like, their lineup on paper looks good. I feel like there's a lot of stretches, and you saw it last year where it was Judge and nobody else, where he doesn't have enough help over 162 games. Stanton has slumps at the point in his career. Josh Donaldson is no longer the hitter he was. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, I think, is great at what he does at shortstop, but you know how the fans are. They want 30 home run, 100 RBI, power sluggers in the Bronx. They don't want any of these contact guys. Harrison Bader was great for them in times last year. I really like him as a player, and I'm a Gator fan, so I'm always going to support him. But I don't know if he's going to have the offensive production he had towards the end of last year. Aaron Hicks is getting up there. Like I don't, those fans hate him. They're running him out of town. And I know they had an all-star catcher last year. Trying to think of his name. If you want to help me out, I know their backup is. Why can't I think of his name? What's the
Trevino.
Yankees? Trevino. Thank you. I'll be interested to see if he's able to do it again. He's someone I didn't watch enough last year when I watched Yankee games to see his input. I have mixed opinions. I have and this is talking to non-Yankee fans. I have a lot of people saying he should be able to do what he did again, and I see other people saying he shouldn't. But what I do know is he does things a lot better than what Gary Sanchez was doing for him in his time in New York. So yeah, I think that's a solid guy you can at least rely on offensively or defensively to win you ball games. Stanton's going to hit the home run ball. They brought back Anthony Rizzo, and as he's aging, that's a park that's perfect for him in the twilight of his career upcoming, being that he walks a lot now at his point. That short porch is right there for him just to drive anything out for either a double off the wall or a home run. Judge was the MVP last year. He's the new captain officially for the next decade plus. So you got that going for you. They finally got rid of Chapman, who was great at times, but never when needed, and that's what Yankee fans like to remember, and I understandably so. Yeah, and the bullpen is always something they're always going to be able to add on. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a very close race. I'm not saying that. I guess to drop a spoiler, like I don't think the Blue Jays are going to be out here to win the division by 7 games like the Yankees did last year. I think this is going to be neck and neck, and I mean, I want to hear your opposite analysis before I give my Toronto one. But yeah, I know this one might catch me a lot of flack when we're watching this back at after Halloween next year. But New York Yankees second place, very close though, very very close, tough decision.
Yeah. So yeah, I think coming in at first place, I'm gonna be annoying, and I'm gonna go with the New York Yankees. Big surprise, I
Wow.
know, but I have them winning a total of what did I say, 96 wins for Toronto. I think they're gonna win 4 extra games. I think they're gonna probably be 162. So nice
But one
flat
question
neutral
for
there.
you: you said
Yes.
96 and 64. So do you want to up it to 98 and 64 for Toronto, or do you want to give them 2 extra losses, or do you want to even it out and say 97-65? You were 2 games
Well,
off, so
I'm gonna say the Blue Jays will go 96 and 66. So I have the
okay, 4 games.
Yankees going 100 and then 62. So yeah, I mean the Yankees I think are gonna gain a one extra win compared to their last year record.
Ooh.
And the Yankees right now, I mean, we're seeing the consistent thing. They get to the playoffs, and then a team called the Houston Astros kicks them out. They haven't won a World Series since 2009. 13-year championship is one of their, I want to say that maybe their longest, or one,
Definitely.
I don't know if it's the longest, but one of the longest. And they
Wow.
were quite aggressive this offseason. I mean, you brought back Judge on a mega deal, named him the captain. You brought in Carlos Rodon to help that rotation. There's going to be a lot of questions going into this season and coming out of spring training. With a lot of their prospects, Anthony Volpe, Jason Dominguez, Oswald Peraza, and Cabrera as well. Um, you know,
Forgot to mention
I
them.
think the Yankees have a really good shot when it comes to it. I think when it comes to the rotation, I think they have arguably one of the best rotations in baseball. I mean, you look at Garrett Cole. He's a guy who's dependable. He goes out there. I mean, he threw 200 pitches, 200 innings. The last couple years, back to back to back. You don't see that a whole lot in baseball. Say what you want about Garrett Cole. He'll have 2 great starts, and then he'll get absolutely rocked the next start. The long ball's an issue for him, sure. I get it. He plays at Yankee Stadium. He's going to give up a lot of home runs. His metrics on Baseball Savant when it comes to barrel percentage and extra base, all that stuff, it's not going to look great. I get it. He's going to give up a lot of power. He's going to give up a lot of hard contact. But then he's also going to have amazing starts where he gives up 2 hits and strikes out 10. Garrett Cole rolling that rotation. He brought in Carlos Rodon. He's going to be the nice lefty of that rotation. Obviously, he is not going to be there for the beginning, which I think is going to be a massive blow for them. So, who's going to replace him in that? You got Luis Severino below, ace level stuff, Nestor Cortez, ace level stuff, in my opinion. But then, there's questions, are you going to go with Clark Schmidt? Going to go with Domingo Herman? The 4-5 spot in that rotation is going to be of question. And I think that's the only thing I would critique of the Yankees. Bullpen wise, I think they got some good guys. Clay Holmes, I don't think he'll quite have the first half of what he did at all. I'm not really expecting him to be super great, but he's a guy. You have Jonathan Loaizaga, Michael King, Wandy Peralta, Lou Trevino. They got him recently, so he could be a nice little addition to that. So, I think Aaron Boone has relievers he could depend on essentially. When it comes to the lineup, like I said, you brought Aaron Judge back to that big contract. You name him the captain, and Yankee fans are happy. Do I think he's going to hit 62 home runs? I don't know about that. The projections are not super crazy on his power and home runs. Maybe something around 40 to 50, I think could be a little bit reasonable. I'm not crazy about the lineup. Like you said, Aaron Hicks is going to be that left fielder projected, and
for now,
for now, coming, June, July, is that going to be the case? I'm not crazy about it. Harrison Bader, I could easily see him being a guy who breaks out and then easily being a guy who just sucks. Josh Donaldson, he's up there in age. I question his abilities. Gleyber Torres, was expected to be this great player, never really came out. Anthony Rizzo, he's on the decline defensively, offensively. His launch angle is going down. His ground ball percentage is going up. He's going to probably bat like 220 and give you 30 home runs, 20 home runs. You need more than that. The only really two guys that I would say, oh, yeah, I trust these guys are Judge and Stanton. I think those are going to be two guys who are going to carry this team with power.
Can they be healthy, though?
That's the question, is can they be healthy? And we saw last year. We saw them healthy, and look what they did. They made history. So can they repeat that? Can they carry this lineup? I worry this is a team that is very heavy on home runs and strikeouts. Saw with the Phillies, and you see with a lot of lineups around baseball, you need table setters. And do the Yankees have those table setters? As of right now, I don't think so.
The ones they do, the fans don't
like. And that's why I bring up the question of, Oswaldo Cabrera, Peraza, Jason Dominguez, Anthony Volpe. Are those going to be guys that are going to be, starting to shuffle out? The older guys, your Josh Donaldson, your Aaron Hicks, coming June, July, if you're not seeing results from those guys, they're doing great on the bench, you're great in AAA, you're going to make a phone call up to Cashman, and I think that's the possibility. But I know I'm talking bad. I know it's like I'm sounding bad, but no, I still think they're a great lineup. I still think they have the pitching, they have the lineup, they have the power. And like I said, you're not going to be facing the Blue Jays as much. You're not going to be facing the American League East as much. They're going to be playing more games against the Nationals, the Marlins, other bad teams. And I think they're going to annihilate them. So I think that's really going to help them out. So yeah, I have the New York Yankees coming in first place, 100 games, 62 losses.
Two things before I get into the Blue Jays. A, I'm watching just the beginning of the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico elimination game in Miami, which is an absolute scene right now. So the Marlins could be, if they were to ever figure things out in the future, and maybe knock down one of our giants that we have built in front of them. But man, Johnny Cueto, what a first inning he just had. He just fooled MJ Melendez, Lindor. He just struck out the side almost immaculately. So that was electric to see. So I wonder how that game's going to go. I'm sure you'll tune into some of that after the show if you get a chance. Secondly, about the Yankees youth, that's the part I didn't mention. Like I'm really high on some of their. I'm really glad that maybe they left out some of these veterans for one more year, just so their farm is ready to take control. Like Oswaldo Peraza, like Anthony Volpe, Jason Dominguez looks great so far. He looks like everything of what they expect him to be so far early in his projection. So that's really good to see. I don't know if they have any pitching prospects. If they do, I guess we'll come to know them at any point in the future. But also, like the Yankees are an organization where their prospects, I guess they're similar in the Braves, where they might not be accurately rated because of how their major league depth is set up, and maybe these guys come up and sneak up on you, and they turn out to be the completers of the roster. So we'll see. I don't know if they have any pitching guys up their sleeve. I think they could probably use a little bit of depth there, whether it's the pen, whether it's the starting rotation, because it just seems like the Yankees are a type of team that can't avoid injuries. I mean, we're sitting here on March 15th, 2023, recording this. We already have two guys that are going to be missing time for them opening day that were supposed to be long term starters for them this season. And their bullpen, Clay Holmes was injured a crap ton last year. Tommy Kahnle is back, and he really did nothing with his time in LA since leaving the Dodgers, or since leaving the Yankees originally. Chapman, when he was there, was never healthy and was never there when absolutely needed most. No, he's now Kansas City's problem, but I guess a lot of that comes back to Aaron Boone. And if he has another underwhelming season, I get it. Like the American League, the Astros are just a giant to get through. So I know Yankee fans, because of what happened over the years, want to get past that team so badly, and they're a fan base that only accepts winning and nothing less. But I wouldn't be surprised if they had like a second place finish, or a finish that you're talking about where they just get run over by the Astros again, and they can Boone. It's just the ultimate way that they run things up there, and we'll come to see. I think they're definitely going to be a good team. It's just, are they going to be as good as fans want them to be? That's always the biggest challenge for the Yankees. But anyway, enough about them. Now I'll do my mini rant on the first place champion. I got the Toronto Blue Jays, a team that has a lot to prove this year. They are behind schedule on their rebuild. I think it's fair to say. They have been in a, I don't know, win now mode since probably late 2019 when all their guys came up. They were just short that year. 2020, they made the playoffs extended, whatsoever. That's a season that's kind of in the drain, and maybe that hurt them a little bit. But 2021 had a great, summer. They finally got to move back to Rogers Center, towards the end of that season, and they were just short of the postseason. They got some of their guys locked down though. Like Bichette is going to be avoiding arbitration. I think Vlad has his money. They got Chapman for another year or two before that third base prospect they drafted in 2020 comes up. I'm looking at the roster here, as you said. Like a couple years ago, the Blue Jays' problem was pitching. And in the last couple of years, they've addressed it. Like they added Chris Bassett from your Mets, a really nice guy who I personally like. Yusei Kikuchi is a guy that they're planning on bouncing back, and he's looked so good in spring training so far. Take it with a grain of salt, but the adjustments he's been talking about have so far come to fruition. Alek Manoah looks like a long time Cy Young candidate. I'm not so high on Jose Barrios at this point in time. I think he was a guy that was a bust for the Twins. They caught lightning in the bottle in Toronto, and I think that might be a nightmare of a contract for Toronto. So that's something to look out for. He does not look good at all this year. He doesn't look like anything changed. A guy no one really talks about is Hyunjin Ryu still there. I think he has a chance to maybe jump someone like Jose Barrios, or a prospect that just isn't cutting it and has to get sent back to AAA. So we'll see what they do with him. Yeah, they got the bullpen help a couple years ago. The pin looked bare back there, but they stole Chad Green from the Yankees. I like the Yimi Garcia signing. I know they're not all from the same point in time. They got Anthony Bass and Zach Pop from the Marlins, and anytime you can poach a couple arms from them, they're usually going to be able to do you good if put in the right situation. Eric Swanson, they made in that trade with Seattle, who of course broke their hearts last year. Brandon Belt is an interesting name. A guy, him and Whit Merrifield are just kind of there off the bench. Two veterans that can get after it any day, can play a lot of positions, might be able to, since they have a limited role, might be able to turn back the clock a little bit with the competitive atmosphere. I'm not saying these guys are going to be all-stars, but guys that are going to be able to do their job and Blue Jays fans will come to love over the summer. Wish they had them longer than what they will. Kevin Kiermaier, a lefty that's going to be added to their lineup to kind of stabilize some things, help their defense out there as well. Two things that they absolutely needed. And same thing with Dalton Varsho. Like, I guess an interesting thing to me, I know they traded a little bit of their catcher depth. I think they had like 5 major league caliber catchers like a year or two ago. One got DFA'd because of a story. We're not going to get into that. You know exactly what I'm talking about, the now Red Sox catcher. And they traded I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but he's now with the Diamondbacks. He was in the Dalton Varsho trade. So I'll be interested to see if Alejandro Kirk and Danny Jansen both have good years, if they have another catcher that's serviceable at AAA, if they're willing to trade Danny Jansen to a team that's really desperate for a catcher to get something back, whether it's a major league piece and another prospect to keep retooling their system. That'd be something I look out for, because I don't know if they're going to be able to keep both these guys long term. I wouldn't be surprised if a team like the Cubs, who, if they're overachieving this summer, comes calling up Toronto saying, "Hey, we lost our catcher to our arch rival this summer. Is there any chance that we can put together a package with some of our guys to get a Danny Jansen or Alejandro Kirk?" So that's would be an interesting storyline that I'm thinking. How are both these guys gonna be long term? Because they're both righties. They're both about I mean, their frames are a little bit different. Alejandro's at 5'8", 245, 3 years younger. Danny Jansen brings a little bit different approach to the table, 6'2", 215. So not really the different differential factors you want to see, but who knows? I could be wrong, and it might work out great for them. But yeah, this team looks loaded. As I said, I think Charlie Montoyo was a guy that just didn't really mesh well with him. They brought up the AAA manager who all of them learned to be with when they were in the minors, waiting for their moment now. And the guys are paid. Like, it's time to go. Y'all are behind schedule. Last year was not the ending that Toronto wanted to see. I think it was a really good matchup for them either way with Seattle. It would be tough to beat. And for them to then go on and see Houston was just an unfair story in itself. So, yeah, I'm picking you guys. Don't prove me wrong. That's all I'm saying. I'm high on the Blue Jays train. And let's see if I'm wrong and I look stupid and the Yankees won by 10 games. But we'll see. Well, I know we differentiated a little bit. So I guess as we transition to the National League East, I'll let you bring your first couple of points to the table before we get into our fifth place team.
Yeah, so I think coming into fifth place in the National League East, and I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in baseball. I have the Washington Nationals.
Yeah.
I have the Nationals probably going 52 and 110.
Wow.
I think they are going to have a really miserable season. If you're a Nationals fan, I probably wouldn't even turn on the TV.
They
Um,
probably didn't last year
you
after Soto
know,
was gone.
I get it. A sale of the Nationals, might be a couple, a few good things that could happen for the team. You have a couple intriguing guys, prospects, C.J. Abrams, Keibert Ruiz, who they just extended to a deal, Cade
Love that.
Cavalli, Mackenzie Gore. But you don't really have a whole lot. All of their guys are, oh well, this guy breaks out. It's really all what ifs. Obviously the only guy you have under contract for the next couple of years is Steven Strasburg, and he's not even going to be on the roster. He's going to be pushed back a little bit longer because of injury. And when was the last time he went out there every 5 days and pitched? 2020. So I mean that's been a disaster of a contract for another day. But right now you really don't have a lot. I think rotation wise, they're one of the worst rotations in baseball. You have one of the worst pitchers in baseball, and Patrick Corbin. No offense to him, of course. Josiah Gray may be an interesting candidate to see how he goes. I think he could develop down the line, maybe give him another year or two. Likewise goes for Mackenzie Gore. Bullpen wise, you got a couple intriguing guys. I think Trevor Williams could be an interesting name. Erasmo Ramirez. We'll see how they go. Kyle Finnegan, aka Pete Alonso's son. Of course, I had to say that. But yeah, in terms of roster, in terms of the offense, and you got Dom Smith, you brought him in. I'm not, we'll see how he goes in an everyday role. A couple other guys, Lane Thomas, Alex Call, brought in Corey Dickerson, Victor Robles, he's still rolling out there. Carter Kieboom, Luis Garcia, Jeimer Candelario, CJ Abrams, Keibert Ruiz, of course. We'll see how Jeter Downs goes. Somehow the Nationals picked him up. I never really realized that. Joey Meneses, he actually was been pretty big for the Nationals last season when he got called up. 30 years old, and he was a prospect. Crazy to see. We'll see what he could do. He'll probably be a DH first baseman role if he could mash the ball. We'll see what the Nationals' future could hold with him in the lineup. But right now, I don't think it's enough. I still think they're going to be a tough team to watch. I don't think they're going to be competing much. I mean, the only teams that will probably be winning ball games and competing against is, going to be teams like the Oakland Athletics and, Cincinnati Reds and Colorado Rockies. I don't think they stand any chance against any other team. I mean, the only division they probably wouldn't finish last in is the AL West, and that's with the Oakland Athletics. So, I don't really have much hope for the Washington Nationals this year. Bullpen wise, they're not horrible. I think they have a pretty decent bullpen, but can't really win many games with the bullpen. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those bullpen arms get shipped at the deadline. So, it's going to be an interesting year for the Nationals, kind of just rebuilding, see if they could speed it up. I don't, maybe 2024, 2025 could be their year where they start being competitive again. But unfortunately, I have the Washington Nationals finishing in fifth place at 52 and 110.
I should have came a little bit better prepared with the records. So That's my bad, but I have them in the same spot, fifth place in the National League East. But I do have them at 60 plus wins. I think their over under is at 59 and a half. I mean, the team's got to win like what, 8, 9 games a month pretty much because the season's 6 months and change. I think that's very feasible for them. The talent isn't there. But I think Nationals fans aren't mad at it, being that they went balls to the wall and they did win a World Series. They got it at the very end of their window, and I think they're absolutely happy with that. They tried the retool thing in 2021. It didn't work out, and they got some good prospects back in exchange. The Juan Soto thing kind of came out of nowhere last year. I thought that maybe he'd be a building block for them to continue with. But honestly, if they were going to do that, they should have extended him, a year or two after he got to the big leagues. It got too long and they got too bad to the point where he's like, I want out of here. So Nelson Cruz, of course, was out. Josh Bell is out. Like a couple guys that were stopgaps for them. I'm pretty sure what's his face? They had a second baseman, Cesar Hernandez, go to Detroit as well. But yeah, to talk on the pitching staff, like they just got so unlucky with the Patrick Corbin and Steven Strasburg situation. Like guys that were healthy when they paid them. Like they brought in Corbin to maybe entice Harper to coming back to DC, but also say, you know what, we're setting up a future without you. And hey, they won a World Series that freaking season. And the guy had, the first 2 years he was healthy, 2019 and 2020 completely went off the rails the last 2 years. And thankfully for them, there's only 2 more years to eat. So this might be the last season of him in the nation's capital. They may be able to DFA him at this point next year, eat that last year's salary. You and I have talked about how it's a lot easier to DFA guys with 1 year left in the deal over 2 because the money is less rolling over. I mean, yeah, Carl Edwards Jr. out of the bullpen, ew. Hunter Harvey out of the bullpen, ew. Steven Strasburg, same thing. Like, this guy was the MVP of the World Series, pitched 3 starts in a 7-game series, shoved in all of them, was a huge factor in them winning that title, was a Nationals legend even up to that point. Up there with the likes of the Ryan Zimmermans of the world, and they paid the guy like they should, and his arm just went to jello. And those two guys is really what hindered a lot. So I feel bad for them in that point. The Kiva Ruiz extension I like. A guy who doesn't strike out a lot, gets on base, one of the toughest hitters in that lineup. I know there's not many there, but came over in the Max Scherzer trade a year or two ago. So I really like that extension for them. CJ Abrams, another guy who didn't really doesn't really have a chance to compete in that San Diego middle infield anymore. He was competing with prospects like Jackson Merrill of the world, but then also with them getting Fernando back, still having Xander, locking up Manny Machado, Kim, and Cronenworth are up platoon. Like there was just no space for the dude. A Georgia native, he killed the Braves at the very end of the season, and I think he had success against the Mets. And those couple series we both played against them at the end of the year, he started hitting a little bit more towards the end of the season. So it'll be interesting to see if he continues to develop as he gets a full-time starter role with Washington, because the fielding attributes are there, but the hitting just has to come up a little bit. And I'm not so I wouldn't be that surprised if it didn't. I think that he still has a pretty good future. Your guy Dom Smith getting more of an opportunity this year. We'll see how that goes. Same thing with like Corey Dickerson. Had a good year with St. Louis, and they apparently thought it was lightning in the bottle. They said you can skedaddle, and with all their outfield prospects, it makes sense. So he'll have an opportunity to maybe play himself into a trade. Lane Thomas came over in the John Lester trade a couple years ago. He's been okay for them in moments, not really anything flashy. But a person you kind of talked over that I want to kind of mention about is Victor Robles. He and Soto grew up in the same town in the Dominican. They were supposed to, the Nationals signed them 1A and 1B, and they were best friends growing up across towns, competing with each other in that, the baseball tournaments they had. So him and Soto knew each other their whole life, and they're like, we like you, and we want you to be part of our core. Soto has been everything of it. Robles looked like a great player his first couple of years, and not the same player as Soto is, not this potential 300 hitter that hits you 40 home runs, MVP, knows the strike zone better than the umpires. He was a skinny guy, a guy who was a 7 or 8 hole, really fast, really good fielder, so almost like lightning and thunder. And the Nationals had him bulk up over that COVID season, and it lost him 2 years. It made him become someone who he absolutely wasn't. And you saw last year he kind of came back to what he was frame-wise before, but it's 2 years gone at the team he is now. Like, I wonder if that's just going to end up being an absolute waste for him. So, I'll be interested to see if he can bounce back. I know I'm rooting for him, but I'm not so high on Victor Robles as I was once upon a time. Yeah, the Jeter Downs thing is an interesting thing. I think he's another flyer that we'll see. Riley Adams, not a bad backup catcher for where the Nationals are at. Yeah, we're gonna need to see a little bit more out of their prospects in the rotation too, like Josiah Gray they got in the Houston Astros deal. They gotta see more out of him. He was really bad last year.
Dodgers,
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, Dodgers.
LA,
That's
yeah.
that was also the Keibert Ruiz trade. I was thinking of the trade they made opening day a couple years ago where they got some reliever in return. Um, Same thing with Mackenzie Gore. He came over in the CJ Abrams Juan Soto trade. He didn't look good at all last year, but I think a lot of it is he's probably taking a little bit of advice from Patrick Corbin. And, you don't want to learn from this current Patrick Corbin. So keep him away at all costs. Kay Cavalli, Victor Arano. So yeah, I think this is a team that might be able to sneak up on you. Win 5 of 6 once or twice next year and get to that 60-win total that I'm projecting. But yeah, I think it's going to be a long year for the Nationals. But hey, they got the World Series a couple years ago, and Washington sports aren't great right now. That's the thing. I know we've been able to deflect and say, oh, we'll just pay attention to this team. Oh, we'll just pay attention to this team. Like the Capitals are the Redskins Commanders are one of the worst run franchises, and the Wizards are one of the most mediocre franchises as well. So salute to you guys from the Capitol, but this is what your future is. But you sacrificed it for a World Series. Sorry for the rant, but I think it was justified just to give the Nationals a little bit of spotlight, since I know we won't for the majority of the season. If you're ready, as Eddie Rosario grounds out, it's 1.5 complete for Miami in that Dominican Puerto Rico game. So who's your fourth place team? I think I have a good idea.
So yeah, coming into fourth place, I have the Miami Marlins, and Marlins lineup was pretty bad last year. Um, yeah, it was pretty bad. They relied heavily on a couple pitchers, and they still didn't even finish with a good record. And the Marlins are an interesting team. I could easily see them winning 85 games, but I could easily see them winning 70 games. And with that said, I think I'll meet in the middle, and I think they'll probably go like 81-81. I think they're a 500 ball club, most likely. I think that's their goal this season, is to get to 500 and above. That's their biggest goal, and then take on from there. We got a couple good guys this offseason, Luis Arias, Gene Segura, but still, I don't even think those two guys are enough to help out this lineup, yet alone, help this team produce above average statistics. So I think they're going to have to rely heavily on their pitching. Like I said, offensive contributors, Luis Arias, Josh Chisholm Jr., Garrett Cooper, Gene Segura, Joey Wendell, Brian De La Cruz, Jorge Soler, Avisal Garcia, Jesus Sanchez, Peyton Burdick. A lot of young prospects is what they're kind of looking at right now. John Birdie, he could be a nice stolen base. I'm sure he'll probably steal a lot of bases. With the pickoff limitations and the bigger bases. I wouldn't be surprised if he steals 35, 40 bags this year. So keep an eye out on him. Pitching wise is really where it's at. You have Sandy Alcantara. Is he gonna post this elite season like he did last year? We'll see. I don't think he's going to be posting like a 185 ERA or anything like that. But, I still think he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. He'll be in contention for the Cy Young, of course. In terms of some other arms in that rotation, Jesus Luzardo, Johnny Cueto, Edward Cabrera. I think he'll have a really good year, Edward Cabrera. I think he'll break out. Max Meyer, however you say that last name. A couple other guys in that bullpen, Tanner Scott, AJ Puck. Trevor Rogers, we'll see if he goes in the bullpen or starter role. We'll see. He's kind of fallen off a little bit. So yeah, right now Marlins, I think they're a good team. It's just like you said. It's like I said, they're in a tough division. You can't choose your family, and I think if they're in the Central, I think they're a second place team. I think AL, of course. Even NL too. Why not? You look at the Brewers. They rely heavily on their pitching. Limited offense, but in this case, you only, it's interesting. They have a couple guys who could really break out offensively, but the only guy that I really trust in that rotation to be an elite ace to give me a win is Alcantara. I think they have a great, 2, 3, 4, 5, but when I compare it to the Brewers, they have much more depth and much more experience, eliteness. So yeah, right now I think the Marlins are going to rely heavily on their 1-2. Aces, the lineup's going to have to improve. And if they're playing 500 ball, maybe they make a splash at the deadline. We'll see. But yeah, right now I have them finishing in fourth place. I think they'll be like 81-81. I think they'll finish like 500.
Same thing for me. I got the Miami Marlins in fourth place. It might be a little bit more cookie cutter for us, being that this is our division and all. But honestly, if the Marlins finish 500, I think fans will be happy at that, knowing that they're seeing steady improvement from 67 wins to 70 plus wins, now in the 80s. I think this is a team that's going to. I think them and the Diamondbacks might be the team that benefits the most from the balanced schedule. Two teams that are in tough divisions with almost giants in front of them. Now being able to see them less and seeing teams that they are better than, like the Kansas Cities and the Detroits of the world, being able to get more wins against rosters like that will help them in the win column. Absolutely. Yeah, this is a team that's always had an overabundance of starting pitching, and they haven't been able to figure out how to use it correctly. Like they shipped Pablo Lopez off for Luis Arias, who I think is going to be a great fit down there in Miami. But I think they could have gotten another guy in return that has a little bit of pop, like not to play the game of Zach Pop being out of there, but a lot of their guys that they brought in to hit the ball around the yard, like the Avisail Garcias, like my guy Jorge Soler, have really just not produced to that level yet. Jesus Sanchez and Brian De La Cruz, like one of them has to be able to turn the corner and provide a little bit more stability as a hitter in that outfield. Like Joey Wendell's still slotted in as their everyday shortstop as of right now. And I don't really know if that's the move you want. I know they got some prospect in return from the Dodgers. I think it's Miguel Vargas, in the or what's his name? Let me go to the non-roster and figure that out real quick. They got him in the Miguel Rojas trade, who is projected to be a pretty good shortstop within the next year or two for Miami. I'll get the name here in just 1 second. They actually have a couple guys on their non-roster invite who I'm very I'll toot my own horn. I kind of predicted that they would be. It's to go to Miami. Who is this guy's name? Not Charles LeBlanc. Could you try to Google that? What was the guy that got in return in the Miguel Rojas trade? It's egging at me. And while I do that, I'll talk about a couple of their non-roster guys who I had an idea that they'd end up in Miami. Like the Yuli Gurriel signing just seemed like at his point in his career, he'd be a guy that maybe wants to finish his career down there in Miami. I think a guy that might be able to play um, enough into their system where he's going to help them out offensively. I know he's not what he was with Houston over the last handful of years, but a guy that I think can still do a lot for a ball club in need of offense like Miami is. Yuri Perez and Max Meyer, you talked about, were guys that they need to get healthy, and same with Sixto Sanchez. I'll put him in the same boat. Guys that need to be healthy and just got to be ready to be major leaguers. Like they've been prospects for so long. Thank you, Hayden. It's Jacob Amaya. That's the shortstop. So if Joey Wendell is your guy for April, maybe by mid-May, Jacob Amaya is your starting shortstop. And honestly, I think the Marlins might have won that trade over the long term. Chichi Gonzalez, another guy that is kind of was rescued from the Rockies pitching department and looked okay in his time in Miami last year. Another race swap, they got JT Chargoy. Like that's an interesting pickup for them. AJ Puck, I think, could be another stable guy out of that bullpen. If for a spot start, he might be able to help out Nick Fortes and Jacob Stallings behind the plate. They have, I think, Joe Mack is one of the better catcher prospects, who's raking right now in their system. So if Jacob Stallings isn't the guy by the end of this year, I think it is a short-term contract anyway. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in the majors at some point soon. Like we've been talking about how they've slowly come along as a franchise with the family that's been in front of them. But honestly, like you're seeing their farm is improving and improving every year. They brought back Gary Cooper after his All-Star season. Jazz Chisholm was the MLB cover athlete this year. It'll be an interesting adjustment to see if he makes it in center field. I don't think it'll be pretty at first. I don't know if they'll end up scratching that, or if we're sitting here at the end of 2023 and he's a top 5 Gold Glove candidate. We'll have to see. John Birdie gets on base, steals bags, a quality guy, honestly, for what it's worth. Gene Segura, as you mentioned, like another Latin guy that I think is just happy to be in Miami. Same thing with Johnny Cueto. I'm seeing him shove right now for the Dominican Republic in this winter go home game on his new turf. Like the dude is hyped up and amped to be in Miami. I think similar to what Merrifield is going to experience in Toronto, just a whole different environment. Just excited to be there. And yeah, I think this team, even if they are 500, like I think they're a team that's able to beat you on any given night. If they put the right lineup out there, which being that they have a first-time manager, you might see a little bit of with Skip Schumacher maybe not being the best at decisions. But I think he'll learn with time. I think the guys are going to love him. And yeah, if they're 500, I think that's an improvement for them altogether. And we'll see. I think it'll be an interesting year for Miami. That's for sure. Definitely. The future still looks bright for them, and with how slow they've come along, that's a good thing to hear. This might be where we have a mini argument with ourselves. We're going into the big three now, the big monsters in the National League East, including our clubs and the hardcore owners' favorites, Philadelphia Phillies, which are all in this mix. Hayden, who do you have last out of those three?
I have I have the Philadelphia Phillies. I mean, the
Oh,
Philadelphia
come on, give him
Phillies.
the real name. Give him the real name.
Yeah, I have the Philadelphia Phillies. You know, yeah, well, I'll be professional. My apologies. Yeah, I have the Philadelphia Phillies coming in at third place. I'm probably gonna have them going like 89 and 73. However, it really doesn't matter where you finish because in the MLB playoffs, it doesn't matter if you're a wild card team, division winner. We saw last year they were the last seed in the playoffs, and they were 3 games away or 2 games away from winning the World Series, or 3, whatever. Got to the World Series, they won the pennant. So yeah, like I said, don't be they're third place. It doesn't matter. Phillies snapped their postseason drought last year, went on a great run. Unfortunately, couldn't get the job done. But I think there's a lot of uncertainty. I think you have to look at the timetable for Bryce Harper's return, and then you have the concern of Andrew Painter, was projected to be their last number starter in that rotation. And so you have those two kind of concerns heading in to the season for them. You have a pretty good lineup. I think you have a stacked lineup. Obviously, you have Rhys Hoskins. You brought in Trey Turner. You have Nicholas Castellanos. You have Bryce Harper in the second half. You have Kyle Schwarber. You have Brandon Marsh. I think Alec Boehm and Bryson Stott are going to have great years. I think Bryson Stott's really going to break out for them this year, playing at second base. I worry with Castellanos. We'll see. He has to do better than last year. He was pretty bad last year. Castellanos. Schwarber. We'll see. Is he gonna, try and get that average up, or is he just gonna hit 40 home runs and bat 200? So we'll see. I think the biggest offensive contribution is probably going to be Trey Turner. Nice table setter. You saw so many times last year the Phillies would just hit all these solo shots, and you didn't really have any table setters. So I think now bringing in Turner, having a table setter is going to be good because you can't have Schwarber batting second or lead off. It makes no sense. So I think that'll be good for them. Defensively, I still worry for this team. Having Schwarber and Castellanos in the outfield is, the defensive metrics really pop off there. Big hyperbole, of course. So, yeah, those are going to be two guys who are really going to have to get their stuff together defensively. You have JT Realmuto behind the plate. Can't forget about him, one of the best catchers in baseball. So hopefully he could, do well. Otherwise, you got some, Zach Wheeler still, Aaron Nola. You got Taijuan Walker. He'll be great in the first half and then just wet the bed in the second half. And Philly fans will be screaming his head off. You brought in Gregory Soto. So I think bullpen-wise, I think they have a really good bullpen. Minus Jose Alvarado, who, of course, lost them the World Series. But yeah, I think bullpen-wise, I think they have one of the best bullpens. Well, not one of the best, but I think they got a pretty good bullpen compared to 2-3 years ago when they had one of the worst. So yeah, I think the Phillies' biggest concern is probably going to be defense and maybe that DH role, kind of see how that goes. But I think right now they got some good stuff. Couple concerns, but they got a lot of good stuff like any other ball club. So yeah, I think they'll finish third in the National League East, and I think they'll go 89 and 73.
Yeah, with these teams, they're all going to make the playoffs. Let's be honest, like all three of these jumbo monsters could all finish with 90 to 97 wins, and it doesn't matter where they get in. Like people had talked about with the Phillies, how an expanded playoff would benefit them best. A team that has a couple starters that can shove, and their bullpen is a lot better than what it once was, and guys that can mash and they can beat you in any given series. And they about showed us the first year in the format that, hey, we had a sluggish September and almost lost it all, but Didn't matter. We almost won it all. One thing I don't understand though is their fans are running around acting like they won the whole thing. And my Braves, we were so much more quiet than they were the offseason before, winning the whole thing after, you know, decades of having choking in the city. So very interesting to see the two differential sides. But Hayden, you're gonna hate me. You really are. I might again. Every team is gonna make the playoffs in these last three. My third place team in the National League East. I got your New York Metropolitans. Yeah, if you want to have a raw reaction, go ahead. Just to what I said. Um, I think a lot of it comes down to, yes, y'all did a lot this offseason, but you had a lot of expiring contracts, so you had to do a lot to get back what you had. I know you're able to bring back Diaz, Nimmo, so it's not like you lost entire pieces, but you had to make all these transactions to keep your team where it was. And I think the Braves have kind of learned their lesson to, hey, we can't get out to these dramatic deficits at the beginning of the year, two slumped years where we were fighting back to catch up with you guys, and you guys, of course, were a lot better last year than you were in the 2021 season. And I looked at y'all's schedule, I looked at the Phillies schedule, and I looked at the Braves schedule. The Braves have the toughest schedule in April out of all three teams. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Braves are sitting third come May 1st, even if they have an over 500 month in April, just because we see St. Louis, we see the Astros, we see the Phillies, we see the Padres all in the first month, and that'll be a a rough start. But maybe we get them out of the way, kind of like we did last year. Anyway, I'll talk about the Braves a little while later. Hint, hint. Like your prospects, I'll give you props on this, have looked great this spring. Vientos has been balling. Mauricio has come out of nowhere and has been balling. Alvarez has looked great. I know Parada's a couple years away, but could potentially take over for Tomas Nito in that backup role in a couple years. So you got really good catching depth. I think you guys are like the number 7 farm right now, which is really good for a Steve Cohen trade bait. But also, hey, if you're not able to get all these marquee free agents that he's attesting to get in New York, well, hey, you got some stopgaps to help you out in the process. Your guys' favorite, Luis Guillorme, another great guy to have off the bench. Lindor has been that man for a couple of years now in Cleveland, and now Mr. Smile in New York finally came into his own in a sophomore season. I hope to see Matt Olson do a similar thing for us this year. Brett Beatty has looked super strong this spring. He looks like a dog, which scares me a little bit. And who knows? He could be an infielder. He could be an outfielder. All I know is he's going to be a productive player for the Mets. You still got Mark Hanna and Starling Marte for one more year. I'm sure that you'll probably end up giving them. Oh yeah. We'll get to the Florida Gator in a second, and I know you'll talk about him as well. I think you probably give either Marte or Canna a second contract. I think they're both free agents after this season, or is it after 2024? You can correct me.
Ken is after this season. You have Marte for the next 3.
Okay, so then it's really not even an issue. If Canna has a great year, you'd probably re-up him. If not, you got some pieces like Mauricio and Ruff and Vientos to take their space. Vogelbach was one of the first trade deadline acquisitions around the league last year, and he did a lot for you guys, and I think is a good fit for your clubhouse, that's for sure. Nimmo, your guys' heart and soul of the team, brought back, of course. I'm sure you guys are just like, get Darren Ruff off my team, and that wouldn't be too surprising if that happened sooner than later. Escobar, I think, is what on the last year of his deal was a shorter one, but guys' metrics show that he might have a better bounce back season. Kodai Senga's the wild card for me because I don't know if he'll have a great season this year, but over the 5 years, I think he's a guy that is going to steadily improve. Um, being that he being that he has, no major league experience. Gotcha. No major league experience. But he was really good over in the Japanese leagues. The Ghost Forkball, I'll be interested to see how teams catch up to that. But he could be like a Tanaka scenario where he's maybe not great at first, but over the 5 years is able to flatline, or not even flatline, steadily improve. And be a great steal as it's worth. But yeah, Verlander and Scherzer, I think it's inevitable. One of those guys is going to get hurt and miss some time. Like at their age, when they're healthy, they're going to be on. But are they going to be on all year? I don't really think you can say that. They're two guys that have both come off big injuries the last couple years over parts of their seasons, and I think it's probably inevitable that one will miss time. Quintana, I know, is already going to be out for you guys till about the All-Star break. You stole David Robertson from Philadelphia. Really nice deal to solidify some of the holes that Lugo and May left and replacing them. So yeah, a team that is going to make the playoffs. I don't know if Edwin Diaz is going to be as dominant as he was last year. Definitely one of the top closers, but I don't think you can expect him to only blow one save again. That's for sure. I know you hate me right now. I'm sorry, but again, all these teams are going to make the playoffs, and I wouldn't be surprised if all three of these teams won 90 games. Um, so yeah, let's see. I guess here's the real moment of truth. Who you have in second before we want to ultra debate? Uh, who's the team that you have just missing out on the National League East crown?
Yeah, I mean it's tough. I really feel it's hit or miss, and I think these two teams are literally going to get in. I think they're going to have literally a 1 game difference.
Like
I'm not
last year.
joking. I think it's literally going to be a 1 game difference, and I'm probably going to go with the Atlanta Braves. I think I just kind of have to.
As a Mets fan,
You
I
know,
understand it. I understand it. So
Braves had an interesting offseason. I don't think they got any better.
they
Nor do
didn't
I
get
really
worse
think
though.
got nor do I really think they got any worse. I would probably say they had a pretty mid off season. So the only really complaint is you lost Swanson and you replaced him with Grisham. And you want to compare it to the Mets, you lost to Grom and you got a second, and you pretty much got 3 other starters. That's kind of my whole complaint. Obviously, I don't think that's the whole determination of where the Braves finish. I think they're a solid ball club. I think we have 2 great catchers behind the plate, and Travis d'Arnaud, Sean Murphy. I think Sean Murphy is probably going to get the bulk of that. And then you go to the infield, you have Matt Olson, who had a pretty decent season last year. Nothing too crazy. Had some pop, but the average, the strikeouts were definitely kind of a killer in my opinion. Move around the infield. Ozzy Albies, Austin Riley. I think Riley's going to have an MVP caliber season, no doubt. I think he'll get some votes. Move to the outfield. You have Ronald Acuna Jr., Michael Harris the second. The DH, you have fan favorite Marcell Ozuna. So, right
But
now, I think the biggest question for the offense is going to be a sophomore year for Michael Harris, for Von Grisham. And, you get to the rotation, of
Matt Olson too,
course,
technically.
Spencer Strider. I'm curious to see how all 3 of those guys do their sophomore year. I don't think all of them are going to have a great sophomore year. I think any player in the league has a sophomore slump. The guy behind me had a sophomore slump. It was 2020, but still, it's the argument I'm trying to make. So I wouldn't be surprised if at least one of those 3 guys that I named has a sophomore slump. But yeah, I think rotation wise, I think they have a pretty good rotation ahead of them with obviously Max Fried. You have Colin McHugh in the mix. You have Kyle Wright. You have Charlie Morton. Of course, Spencer Strider. You have a couple guys in the bullpen. Obviously, Nick Anderson, Dylan Lee, AJ Minter. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. We'll see how Mike Soroka comes. I haven't seen that dude in a decade, it seems about. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting year for the Braves. I think they're a team that, definitely has some power. Definitely going to be high on strikeouts, but we see that a lot in baseball, and those teams still manage to succeed. It's just when you get into the playoffs, you're going to have that mentality. So yeah, I think the Atlanta Braves have an interesting season ahead of them, and I think I have them in second place, and I think they'll probably be 162.
So basically, you guys repeat the same record, and
Yeah,
we drop by 1 game, and that's it. I can
yeah.
honestly see that. I can honestly, and as a Mets fan, and as I completely understand your pick. So no hard feelings at all. I'll get into my second place team. You kind of talked about them already, and you were very very smart on the time. I didn't think this episode would run long at all, but here we are, talking at our butts about every team. So that's fun. Uh, you wanna give me another private chat when you get a second on how much time we still have. The Phillies. A team that won the National League last year had a really slow start, just like the Braves did, and now added Trey Turner, who I think is the best shortstop in baseball, along with Carlos Correa. I think it's 1A and 1B. Their bullpen, which was very bad for them the last couple of years, like I'm going to give them their flowers where it's due. They fixed 2 big parts of their organization, and that was the philosophies of the bullpen, and they were able to add a lot of depth there, and they look a lot better because of it, and they were able to retool some of their prospects that weren't working out to complete the full cornerstones of their roster. Like their defense looked terrible last year. They went out and they got Sosa, and they went out and they got Brandon Marsh for prospects that weren't cutting it. They got the best shortstop in baseball, who is a lot better defensively, I think, than what Bryson Stott would be at that position. For an aging Gene Segura, letting Stott go to that position with a higher chance to break out. Craig Kimbrell and Greg Risotto weren't great in the closer role for teams last year, but Gregory Soto and Kimbrel weren't great in their roles they had last year for the teams, but now they're not in that same situation. They'll be in sixth inning, seventh inning. They'll be able to play the matchup games a little bit easier with them. So you like that. I don't know if they got Corey Nabel back or not, or if he's even signed. So I'm checking right now and I don't see him. Andrew Painter, as you said, was their fifth starter, who was looking like would be a good answer for them to complete that rotation, but is going to require a little bit of missed time. But they got your guy Taiwan Walker, paid him a hefty penny as well to solidify the back end of that rotation. I guess we'll see if Ranger Suarez is able to continue what he did in that second half last year to say he is a 3 and not a 4. I think the Phillies would like that too, not being able to have to pitch three lefties back to back to back to start a playoff series with Nola, Wheeler, and Taiwan. I think they'd like Ranger to step into that 3, that's for sure. Matt Strom was another big lefty that they're adding to their bullpen to go with Alvarado, who they paid. So they got some nasty lefties out of their pen. I know Alvarado blew it at the end of that last season, but still a very good player in my opinion. He crushed us at many times. They're still high on some of their younger guys like Connor Brogdon, like the Dalton Guthries of the world. Josh Harrison's a really nice bench bat for what it's worth. Um, so yeah, I think they did a pretty good job fine tuning the roster last year, making ends meet. When Bryce Harper comes back, I'll be interested to see if he's going to be able to play the field officially this year to help out their defense. Because if he is 100%, he's a better fielder than what Schwarber and Castellanos are. Maybe you put Schwarber back to DH, and you can put Harper in right, Castellanos in left. You got Marsh helping you in center field. Dalton Guthrie definitely has to be. I think his biggest thing is if he can be good defensively, he's a guy that they'll be able to start on any getaway day just to help out. So he's someone to look out for in that roster. Garrett Stubbs and JT Realmuto, a pretty good catching tandem. JT Realmuto, debatably the best catcher in the league. Garrett Stubbs, as a lefty, was able to do some pretty cool things for them last year. I think this is Zach Wheeler's contract year, so I'm be interested to see if he goes balls to the wall and makes John Middleton and Dame Dombrowski bring out the paycheck for them. Wow, Puerto Rico's pulling away in this game. That's interesting. So yeah, I think this is a team that's going to be just like Atlanta and New York, where it's going to be tough to beat. They all see each other less, and I wouldn't be surprised if we had 390-plus win teams, and all of us are screwed out of the 1 seed because of that. So my second place team is the Phillies. Hayden, since we're short on time, I'll go right to you.
Yeah, coming in to first place in the National League East, drum roll, New York Mets. Obviously, coming into New York Mets, I have them at first place, coming 101 and 61. So essentially a extra W in the books for them. It's going to be a 1-game difference. Steve Cohen, the Mets are going to be doing some great things this upcoming season. Had a phenomenal offseason, historical offseason. You did a lot. And, you have a whole roster around you. Just looking at the lineup, having Omar Narvaez, you replace him with James McCann. That's a W. I get it. Narvaez is not really this, big offensive contributor. Likewise with Nito, but you're just waiting for the prospects. So I'm kind of going to break this up. So obviously a catcher, Narvaez and Nito. Good defensive pair, nothing crazy offensively. Moving around the bases, first base, you have Pete Alonso. I think he's going to have a historic year. I think he's going to do better than 2019. I think he's probably going to hit, 45, near 50 home runs. I think he's going to have a phenomenal season. He's going the other way. His average is going up. He's striking out less. He's walking more. Alonso is going to be a dangerous hitter. Second base, you got Jeff McNeil, the reigning MLB batting average leader. So I think he's going to do some great things. I don't know if he'll hit like 330, but I think he could still hit, over 300, 315 in between there. Great defensively, great offensively, slaps the ball. Not this home run hitter. Who cares about that? But he gets on base. I think McNeil's going to have a great year. Moving over to shortstop, you have Francisco Lindor. I think he's going to have another great year. I think he'll probably increase his stats and slash line compared to last year. I think he's a Gold Glove candidate. He's a great wins above average WAR creator for this Mets team. So I think he'll be doing some great things coming into clutch, helping out this team offensively with some power, of course, too. Third base, a little bit of a question. Are you going to go with Escobar? Are you going to go with Beatty? Third base is going to be that question. Is Escobar going to have a better season than last year? Projections are saying he is. It's his final year in his contract. It's projected he's going to have a much better season than last year. I think it's possible. So we'll see how Escobar goes. However, we're coming into June and Escobar is, hitting 200 with 7 home runs. You bet I'm calling up Brett Beatty or someone else. Moving over to the outfield, you have Mark Canha in left field. Great on base percentage machine, gets hit by pitches, does his job. He's a decent table setter in the bottom of this lineup. Moving over to center field, probably the leadoff hitter, Brandon Nimmo, coming back on that mega deal. I think he'll be doing some great things. He's, hopefully if he's has a full healthy season under the books, expect him to, be a first-time All-Star. Death taxes of getting on base. That's what he's known for. He's known for getting on base. He's not a power hitter, just gets on base, and that's what I think you're going to see out of Brandon Nimmo quite a lot. And then right field, you have Starling Marte. I think he really carried this team big time in August when their offense was quiet. So I think he could be another great, leadoff or second guy in that lineup. DH probably kind of going to go with a Vogelbach. We'll see what Darren Ruff does. If Vogelbach could hit for some power, I think he slowed down. He lost some weight. I think he's capable of it. Obviously, Darren Ruff, we'll see how he goes. I wouldn't be surprised if Darren Ruff gets DFA'd and you go with some of the other guys. Like I said, the prospects, Vientos, Beatty, Alvarez, Mauricio. Those are the big guys in spring training. I don't think Mauricio is going to make the roster. I still think he'll get promoted to AAA. I think he'll start the year in AAA. I think Brett Beatty is probably going to be the only guy out of those I think that'll make the roster. If he does, I think he can make the opening day roster. I mean, there's only one roster spot open, and that's Darren Ruff's spot. So I think Beatty will take that spot, if anything. I think Vientos is still going to start the year in AAA, and then likewise goes for Francisco Alvarez. However, I think Alvarez will probably get a call-up maybe June. Likewise goes for Vientos. Rotation-wise, you're stacked. You have one of the best rotations in baseball. Great duo of Scherzer, Verlander. Hopefully they could make, 25, 30 starts each. Coming into Kodai Senga, he's going to be a wild card. We'll see how he fares into New York. I'm not expecting Kodai Senga to be an elite pitcher, but I think he'll have a fair average season for the most part, sub-3 ERA type guy. We'll see how his forkball comes into baseball. Obviously, Jose Quintana's out until July, so that's really going to mean, is David Peterson and Tyler McGill going to slot into this rotation? Can they carry? I think they're capable of it. They've done it the last 2 years in replacement of Jacob deGrom, and, you want a lefty in that rotation, you put in Peterson and McGill. He's capable of it. I think these are their times to shine. You have backups in Joey Lucchesi, Alicia Hernandez, Jose Budo. You move to the bullpen, David Robertson, Brooks Raley, Drew Smith, Bryce DeOka. I think it's going to be an interesting. Of course, Carlos Carrasco in that rotation too. I forgot about him. But yeah, Diaz. Is Diaz going to have this crazy season like he did last year? We'll see. Relievers are streaky, but I still think he'll have a good year. Like I said, I don't think he's going to have a one flat ERA, but I think he'll have a good year. I have the New York Mets coming in for a big year, 101 and 61, first place, winning the division. Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, elite because I say so. And I love
Seattle. And we know so. Who do you think is going to be that one game that decides, like, the one game, the difference between Atlanta and the Braves?
Some bullcrap game against, like, the Athletics or something.
Like game 153, y'all win in a doubleheader, we lose that day, and then boom, that, like, no more of what it was last year where it came down to that stream that we did. It'd be interesting. I understand it, that's for sure. But here's your official picks right here for anybody that's wondering from 5th to 1st on each division. There's Hayden's picks, and I guess we're playing the homework card. Unfortunately, I hope we wouldn't both be that way, but ultimately I understand it. My first place team in the National League East, I got the 5-time consecutive, going for the 6-time consecutive, and I think it'll happen. The Atlanta Braves. Ultimately, I just think it has to happen. I need to see somebody beat them before I believe it otherwise. And yeah, I know there might be Philly fans in the comments saying, well, hey, dude, we beat you in the playoffs this year. Cool. We're talking regular season over 162 games here. The Phillies won that series fair and square, and, they went on not to win anything. So that's one thing I'll always have over them, is we did end up beating Houston. But yeah, you can't win every year. But ultimately, talking regular season wise for the National League East division, I have to see somebody beat the Braves before I say so, before I predict otherwise. And I think what you brought up is interesting, how the Quintana injury now opens up like a fifth starter situation for you guys where you don't know if it's going to be Lucchesi, if it's going to be McGill, if it's going to be Peterson. Same thing for us. Ian Anderson in spring training has not looked any different. He added that new pitch, but he's still walking a lot of guys. He's not making the opening day roster. Soroka was supposed to be pitching in spring training, and that was supposed to be our big spotlight of who to look out for. But ultimately, he is not on the mound still. But I think he'll definitely start in Gwinnett. So it's between Dylan Dodd and Jared Schuster, who you don't know of, are two of our top 10 prospects that are both really good from the lefty side. They are 24 years of age. Spencer Strider was our second round pick in 2020. Jared Schuster was the first rounder. I'm really high on him. And Bryce Elder, who pitched a couple big games for us out of the pen as a starter last year. So ultimately, if we don't end up getting a fifth starter in midseason, I don't think we have to. I think either Soroka comes back healthy or one of those four names I mentioned, Anderson, Elder, Schuster, Dodd, one of them will figure it out. Over four guys with an organization like ours, I think our pitching trainers will be able to at least get one stable fifth starter out of somebody. Kyle Wright, I think we expect a little bit of regression, being that he won 20 plus games last year. So we'll just have to limit the damage there. Charlie Morton, I thought was actually going to retire at the end of last year, is coming back for another year with a club option for a season later. And I think if the Braves were to do some great things this year, he'll probably call it a career at that point. But a guy who had his worst season of his career last year was, well, at least in the prime of his career, being that he didn't really peak until his early 30s. He was walking a lot of guys, plunking a lot of batters. His curveball wasn't spinning as much during the day, and he was giving up a lot of home runs. So, yeah, I think maybe the broken leg was still bothering him a little bit last year, but being that he's almost 38, 39, I'm hoping he's a solid four starter, that's for sure. I have a lot more belief in Max Fried. A lot of people are projecting Spencer Strider to be a top 5 pitcher in baseball. I don't know if that's going to be the case as of yet, but I guess we'll see. I got you, Hayden. So yeah, I mean, Austin Riley got his bag. Matt Olson and Ozzy Albies, I'll be interesting to see how they bounce back from a so year, helping the shift. Like, I'll keep it a buck. Ozzy Albies has been a mediocre offensive player for the last 2.5 years. I think he needs to A, change his approach, or B, change his swing path to fix that. But we'll see how the shift changes helps our two guys that bat from the left side majority. I know Ozzy's a switch, but you see more bats versus the righties. Yeah, prospect wise, like, not a lot left. I mean, Grisham, I think if he gets the job, it's because he's ready. And I think the Braves would have paid Dansby if they really absolutely think they needed to. Sean Murphy is definitely going to be a great guy to have with these new restrictions, with the least amount of pickoffs. I think he's going to be back picking a lot of guys. I think we're going to be able to throw out a lot more runners than what Travis was able to do in his couple of years. And I think him and Eddie Rosario, and talking about Travis d'Arnaud, are going to be a pretty good DH platoon if everything goes to plan. I'm more confident in Eddie Rosario bouncing back than I am guys like Marcell Ozuna. I think he's going to end up with a phantom injury at some point for most of the year and get DFA'd at the end of the season. That's just my opinion, though. All our left field candidates have outperformed him in spring. Jordan Luplow, Eli White, Kevin Pillar, Sam Hilliard, they've all looked better than Marcell Ozuna. We still have a couple prospects. Not a lot of people know of them because they're not in the top 100. But yeah, I mean, no one knew of Michael Harris and Spencer Strider on the top 100 radar, and they went out and won 1 and 2 in the Rookie of the Year candidacy. So yeah, the bullpen looks really good. Definitely one of the best bullpens we've had in a long time, with Nick Anderson potentially being like our 6th or 7th best guy. We'll get back Tyler Matzik and Huskar Yanoa from Tommy John next year. So yeah, I know you're leaving really soon, Hayden. It's been a great show. I'll try to cut myself off at there. I could talk Braves all day, and yeah, announcement for any of our listeners. I do have a new show coming on the Hardcore Sports System with a couple of my friends from Atlanta, talking Atlanta sports, post game shows, more predictions. So it's kind of similar to what Hayden and I have here. So make sure you guys are on the lookout for the new podcast around the ATL with yours truly. But yeah, I know you got to have a fun night, Hayden. It was been great talking to you. I'll definitely talk to you soon for our news update and our Central and Western shows. We're almost to opening day, guys. World Baseball Classic is going to get us there. So yeah, what are your closing words, Hayden?
Yeah, it's gonna be a great season. We got 2 more episodes of these previews coming out probably this week, next week. It's gonna be a great 2023 season. I'm excited. Mets baseball, Braves baseball, every baseball.
Team USA.
Let's go. Let's ride. I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Let's ride, baby.
The Broncos fan in you came out. See you guys next time.
See ya.